What's up everybody, this is Master Ian Gamer. Recently we got a look at all the new content coming in Overwatch 2 Season 20, and while overall you can't honestly say there's a whole ton happening this season, there are certainly some exciting tidbits that are worth focusing on. Wuyong and Doomfist being added as playable heroes to Stadium, a new China location map that isn't even just a reusing of assets from old maps like they've done with a lot of map additions in the past, but instead is a brand new location set in Wuyong's water college that honestly looks fantastic. However, despite being a control map, it is only going to be available to play in Stadium. So what else do we have to look forward to that isn't Stadium specific? Well, of course there's the new hero Vendetta, that's pretty exciting. And beyond that, well, skins. Yeah, unfortunately Season 20 is basically more of what I feared. A new hero is always awesome, and I'm so glad to have Vendetta joining the roster, and the new skins look pretty good for the most part. But outside of these two things, the only really notable, interesting content additions we're getting are exclusive to Stadium, a mode which is well and good in its own right, but unfortunately isn't actually as popular as Blizzard would like to have you believe. So today I wanted to talk a little bit about what we've seen happen over the past year with the addition of Stadium and how it's affected the game as a whole, and try to analyze the actual situation that both players and the developers have found themselves in when it comes to core Overwatch versus Stadium, because I gotta say, as cool as Stadium is, I don't know that Blizzard is making the right decision when it comes to which mode they're focusing on. So let's get into it. Over the course of 2025, Blizzard has been focusing a lot on Stadium. This makes sense, as it's the brand new big mode that they debuted earlier this year, and most of the seasons since its addition in Season 16 have had a heavy focus on adding Stadium-specific content, be that updates to the core mechanics of Stadium, new maps exclusive to Stadium, and even heroes, be they new or old, getting added as being playable in this mode. And while I think this is fine and well and good, and I'm excited that Blizzard is devoting time and effort to this mode, it's reached a point where, as someone who enjoys playing core Overwatch, being quick play and competitive, the shift in development favoritism from core Overwatch to Stadium has become painfully evident. And nowhere in the game has this been more evident than the map department. Over the entirety of 2025, the core Overwatch game has gotten one new map, Atlas. A map which, personally, I actually quite like, but it is a Flashpoint map, which is, for one reason or another, not a preferred mode among a lot of people. And as such, especially with the new map voting system that's been put into place this year, players don't even really get a chance to play on Atlas very much, just because it's typically not voted for. And going back in time past Atlas, the most recent maps we got before that were the new Clash maps, Hanaoka and Temple of Anubis, and, well, I need not talk about player sentiment towards those. And going even further back, well over a year from present day, in mid-2024, was Runasapi, a push map, yet another mode that tends not to be people's favorites. Over the past year, we've had one core map game mode edition, and over the past 2 years, we've only had 4, with 3 of those total 4 at least being strongly disliked and actively avoided by a substantial portion of the player base. But needless to say, Overwatch maps, for the core mode at least, have been very, very much on the back burner, to a point where, as someone who enjoys playing new maps and enjoys playing core Overwatch, I'm getting quite impatient for them to add a new one. We know there's 2 in the works, at least, Tokyo and the Atlantic Arcology, but those are only slated for some time after Season 19. Obviously, Season 20 isn't that season. Maybe it'll be Season 21. Maybe we'll have to wait even longer. And it's pretty clear to me that the reason Blizzard is focusing so little on core mode maps is because instead they're focusing on Stadium, which since its launch as of Season 20 will have gotten 16 maps, 7 of which you could classify as wholly original maps to Stadium that just mostly reuse assets from other existing map locations. But it doesn't even stop with maps. As I'm sure anyone who keeps up with the balance state of Overwatch has noticed, 2025 has also been a year with painfully few hero tweakings, outside of Stadium that is. We'll be lucky to get even 2 notable balance patches a season at this point, with half the time them only making minor tweaks to perks, and not actually any of the core mechanics or abilities of a given hero. And this started happening around the same time that Blizzard started focusing on Stadium. I think it's pretty safe to say for anyone who's paying attention to Overwatch that the core mode of Overwatch itself has taken a back seat to Stadium. But then again, is that necessarily a bad thing? Stadium is the exciting new mode, the new way to play Overwatch that Blizzard has been massively marketing ever since its addition, and based on Blizzard's own sentiment, the mode seems to be pretty popular. They're always talking about it, they're always adding stuff for it. It's the big new thing, the big new way to play Overwatch. And while anecdotally, the sentiment I've seen among players that I spend time around has more so leaned towards still preferring the core modes of Overwatch, I wanted to get a sense for what those numbers actually looked like. Who prefers Stadium versus core Overwatch? What do the stats say? So, I went ahead and ran a poll on my YouTube channel, and out of over 1,700 votes, wow. I knew core Overwatch was going to win, but I was not expecting the discrepancy to be that big. Out of more than 1,700 people who voted, 81% prefer core Overwatch over Stadium. I almost wish I hadn't included arcade and play versus AI in this poll, just so I could get an even more accurate statistical breakdown of who's on Team Stadium versus Team Core Overwatch. But I think these numbers still more than speak for themselves. I even ran the same poll on my Twitter, and while it got significantly fewer votes, the end results were more or less the same. People massively prefer core Overwatch over Stadium. And yet, despite this, for almost a year now, Blizzard has been blatantly neglecting adding content to the core game in favor of focusing on Stadium, a mode that is preferred by only 1/5 of the people who prefer core Overwatch. And this is where I truly realized there's a problem. I get it. Blizzard wants to stay relevant long-term with adding an exciting new mode, featuring mechanics from other popular games in the current competitive gaming sphere, to find a way to freshen up the Overwatch experience and cater to a potentially new audience of players, while also being familiar enough to original Overwatch players that it can ideally appeal to both. And while I'm sure there are many players who do enjoy both Stadium and core Overwatch, the sheer amount of neglect core Overwatch has gotten since the debut of Stadium, in light of how much people still prefer core Overwatch over the new Stadium mode, honestly scares me. Is Blizzard so focused on chasing the hypothetical new player base or new direction for the game that they're forsaking what they already have and is already enjoyed by the vast majority of their player base? And again, I don't have an issue with Stadium or people who like Stadium. I think the mode is great in its own right, and in a perfect world, it'd be getting the exact care, focus, love, and development that we are seeing it get, alongside that same amount of focus for the core Overwatch mode as well. But that's clearly not what the Overwatch dev team is willing or probably even capable of doing. While they may both be Overwatch and are basically just two sides of the same game, in effect, Blizzard is developing them as if they were two separate games. And for a lot of people, they might as well be, because a lot of people are going to prefer playing one over the other. And for anyone who spends even a little bit of time in Overwatch communities online, you've certainly already seen a growing sentiment of people who are frustrated that Stadium gets all the new content additions and core Overwatch does not. So, what do we do? Well, unfortunately, I don't know that there's an easy solution to this problem. Blizzard, I believe, has bitten off more than they can chew with Stadium. I don't think Stadium is a bad development choice, but clearly they're not a dev team sufficient enough to sustain both. Is that their goal? Do they want to fully jump over to the Stadium design as the way Overwatch fundamentally is played? I don't know. I don't know what their long-term goals here are, but all I can say is that for me, as someone who enjoys core Overwatch, and for 81% of the player base, based on my own data, Blizzard is focusing on the wrong side of Overwatch. And that, dear viewer, is where I would love for you to come in the comments down below. Do you prefer core Overwatch or do you prefer Stadium? Which one and why? Maybe you play both equally, or maybe you prefer one but still play a substantial amount of the other. And regardless of which mode you personally prefer, how do you feel about Blizzard's recent focus, specifically on Stadium versus core Overwatch? Do you think they're focusing too much on Stadium? Maybe you like that they're focusing so much on it. Or maybe, like me and a lot of other people I've spoken with, you wish they would give at least a little bit more love to the classic Overwatch core game mode that we all grew up playing and enjoying for the past decade. Either way, thank you so much for watching. I am very curious to hear your all's thoughts on this down in the comments below, and otherwise be sure to subscribe, hit up that bell icon, follow me on X, and join my Discord server to hang out and never miss any future Overwatch 2 news streams and other content. And feel free to check out my second channel, Suki MIG, where I work on a fun streaming side project of mine. If you've tuned into my streams before, I'm sure you've met her. So be sure to check that out. And otherwise, this is Master Ian Gamer signing off. I'm hoping core Overwatch gets more love in 2026. And otherwise, have a great day.